Let's talk about the Juki 1541S, the heavy-duty beast of an industrial Juki sewing machine. Hey guys, it's David from Gigi's Fabric Shop, home to Juki and Janome Junkies. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Juki 1541S. And this machine is a tank. I'm excited to make this video because we're going to be breaking it down so that way for the person at home that just got this machine or the person at home that is looking to get this machine, they're going to have a better understanding of what this machine does, what it's really made of, and how to use it pretty much, and like all the little quirks and features on it and all the little things you need to know to get started with actually using this machine. So maybe you're at home and you're just looking at this machine in the corner of your house and you're like, I am never touching that thing. I am scared, I am intimidated, and David needs to make a new video so I can get the confidence built up to go play on that machine. So this video is going to be that video for you. So let's get started on going over this machine from the top to the bottom so you're comfortable with either making the purchase in the future or getting ready to start using your 1541S at home. Or maybe you already have one and you just want to learn some new things maybe that you didn't already know. So let's get started. So let's start from the bottom of this whole entire contraption and work our way up because there's so much to talk about. It's just going to be easier for me to start from the bottom and just work our way up as we get to the thread stand. So starting with the bottom, the table. This machine comes in a table, and the table is 47 inches long and 21 inches wide. And it has to be in a table because it's an industrial machine that has to be in a table. So it arrives with the head in a box, the table's assembled on a pallet, so all you have to do is take that out. We have a full installation video, so check out that video. We'll throw a link in the description, and you'll probably see info cards with the video of how to set this up. But the table is nice and big. It's got a big measuring tape on it that goes all the way to 32 inches. And there's two options when you purchase this table. You can either get the caster option or the standard table option. They're both phenomenal options. The caster option is a T-leg shape, and the standard option is a K-leg shape. And you'll kind of see, we'll throw up some B-roll shots of what those look like so you can kind of understand, okay, now you kind of get what table you might need. I highly recommend the caster option if you are in a tight confined area that you're moving this around constantly to kind of make your way with your house or the area that it's in. If you are not planning on moving this around a lot, the standard table option is really, really nice. I think it's a little bit sturdier. This T-leg option is pretty sturdy, but it's definitely not as sturdy as the K-leg. I don't have all the wheels locked, so it is wobbly right now, but it's pretty dang sturdy. No complaints with it, but the K-leg is definitely sturdier. Another tip to save you some money is you could always put little furniture pads on the bottom of it, and the one without the casters you can kind of slide around and not damage your floor. So now that we've gone over the table, let's go to the foot pedal on this machine. You can adjust side to side, and the table you can move up and down. The table in its standard configuration, I believe, is like 21 inches tall or maybe like 30 inches tall. So you can kind of move it up and down a few inches depending on how high you want your table to be. So that's nice. And then now let's go to the actual motor of this machine and talk about what options you have with motors. So on our website of JukiJunkies.com, you have two options. You can buy the standard servo motor, which is just going to have a small little dial that you just turn and it just adjusts the speeds with the turning of the dial. And when you hit the foot pedal, the needle's going to move. When you let go of the foot pedal, the needle's just going to stop wherever it was. That's the standard motor. Now you can also upgrade to the needle positioner motor, which I have a full video on the comparison of these, so we'll throw the description and info card on this. But the needle positioner motor is really nice because it's a digital controller that you can allow to position your needle. So whether you want your needle to always end down or up, you can just kind of make that quick little setting change on your machine motor and you're good to go. Also, the needle positioner motor is a little bit slower, in my opinion, than the standard motor. So if you're looking for something to go a little slower, the needle positioner motor is usually a little better for that because you can like just tap on it and kind of do a little single stitch. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like probably later on the video, or maybe we'll throw up a little B-roll of what that looks like here. Both motors, you could find aftermarket pulleys. We don't carry any at the second, but you can find aftermarket pulleys that are a little bit smaller to change your gear ratio, to make the machine go slower and all that kind of stuff. So table, motors, we're done with that. This machine's pretty easy to turn on and off. On both options, you just have an on-off switch. It's just pretty simple like that. And so now that we're working our way up to this area, we have the knee lifter. So the knee lifter is connected to the actual head of the machine, and there's just a little hole in the side of the oil pan where the knee lifter plugs in. In order to plug this in, yeah, there's a little cutout in this knee lifter, and that kind of just aligns with the position of the motor. You'll kind of see how it needs to line up, and then you just push it and it clicks in. To make adjustments on this, so if you're using your knee lifter and it's not lifting up your foot, you just need to tighten down these bolts here. There's two here. If they're loose, it will not lift up your foot because then it just spins in place. It actually doesn't have the force to lift it up. Just tighten those down, you're good to go. You can customize and adjust this depending on where you want it to be, most comfy for you. So that's really nice. So that just goes down here, push, boom, good to go. Now when you use your knee, you can pick up your foot. When you're sewing, it's nice to definitely use that knee lift lever because you can use both hands and also lift up your foot. When you go to tilt back this machine, you have to have this knee lift lever unplugged or it will not tilt back. So keep that in mind. The machine here is extremely heavy. So whenever you get this machine, make sure you have two people to pick it up, but it's an extremely heavy head. This just sits in the table. The S model means safety. So with the S model, you're going to get a safety guard around the needle. You also get a safety clutch, so you can't really knock this machine out of timing because the clutch will just disengage and not let the machine come out of timing. So that's really cool. If you ever were to knock the machine out of timing, you push down this little button in the throat space all the way down. You rotate the hand wheel until it falls down into place like that. And then you just rotate it again really hard while holding that button down, and it'll click the clutch back into place, and you're good to start sewing again. So that's a really cool feature on this machine. You'll see in the back there's the thread stand. The thread stand's also customizable. You got two spots for spools. You can put two massive spools on this machine. Here is a really heavy big spool you can put over there. And then of course you feed it through these little thread guides and it goes down to the machine. So now that we've kind of gone over what it sits in, the thread stand, all that stuff, let's break down what you would do right when you got the machine home. So the first thing you want to do when you put this machine on your table, make sure it has oil. So this machine is a hybrid lubrication system. You have to manually oil a few spots, and then you also have to make sure there's oil in the oil reservoir, which is located on the bottom half of this machine. You want to make sure the oil is between the low and the high mark on this little reservoir. And that's what's actually feeding oil to the whole machine. That's why we call it a hybrid lubrication system, because it self-oils itself in some areas and then manually oils itself in other areas. So as long as you have it filled up between the low to the high, the hook will be oiled and some gears down here will be oiled, so you don't have to manually be oiling this area all the time. You will see, in order to fill this, it's easiest to just remove this little rubber cap right here versus removing the rubber caps on the actual oil reservoir, because then you're more prone to make more leaks. So just remove this one to fill it. If you ever were to have to drain this, you can remove some of these rubber caps on the bottom here. And it's really cool because it's actually pumping oil to your hook on your machine automatically. And there is an adjustment on how to adjust how much oil is going to your hook. There's a small little screw right here. You can turn it left and right and you can make some adjustments. We're not going to show you how to do that in this video. We have a full video going over oiling, so we'll make sure to link that in the description and also throw up an info card on oiling this machine. So now that you kind of have a good understanding of the oiling process on this machine, there's a pan underneath that collects any excess oil that drips down, and then it should go into this little bottle on the right side and you should be able to drain that. So just keep that in mind. It is a little bit oily down there, so whenever you tilt this back up, make sure you don't have any nice pretty projects around the area. So now that we've kind of gone over the oiling, we've gone over the machine table, the motor, the table, legs, all that kind of stuff, let's start going over how to actually use the machine, and this is going to start getting fun here. First thing first we're going to talk about is how to thread the machine, and we have a full threading and bobbin winding video, so we'll put a link in the description for that. But I'll just give you a couple quick tips and tricks as I thread it Remember, you could probably learn from this video how to thread it and wind your bobbin, but it's not going to be an in-depth video on that because we already have a video out there for that. So let's just go ahead and wind a bobbin real quick, show you how that's done briefly. Winding a bobbin, you're going to remove your bobbin case, and on this machine, you're going to get an M-class bobbin. So it's very similar to the size of a long arm bobbin, nice and big, holds tons of thread, and that's because you're going to be running an industrial thread on this machine. So you can use Tex 45 all the way up to like a Tex 138. I've seen people use even a little bigger, but that's kind of pushing it. You want to make sure you're using the right size needle and all that kind of stuff, and maybe smaller thread in the bobbin area. So winding the bobbin, very simple. You're just going to put it on this bobbin winder spool thing here. You push it on there like that, and then you're going to grab your thread. I'm going to use red so it might be a little easier to see. You're going to feed it through this back thread guide, and then you're going to go down to this thread guide here around this tension disc, back through that thread guide like so, and you're going through the little hole on the bobbin like that, pushing that bobbin winder wheel down, and then literally all you do is turn on your machine and hit the gas. But I do recommend when you're winding the bobbin and you're not actually sewing, because this machine actually sews while you wind the bobbin. Remember, this is an industrial machine, and so they want to do everything while multitasking. They want to make their production as fast as possible. So if you're winding a bobbin and you don't want to be sewing at the same time as you're winding a bobbin, you want to lift up your foot so that way your foot doesn't rub on the feed dogs, because that's going to wear out the feed dogs and all that kind of good stuff. So make sure you lift up your foot manually so it stays up, and then hold this bobbin thread like this and hold the gas pedal down. And as you can see, I have the motor speed pretty slow right now. I could turn it up and it would go a lot faster, but we'll leave it at this speed for now. We're not going to wind a full bobbin. We're just going to wind a little bit. So you're going to wind it, keep winding it, and you can snip this thread. You don't have to sit there and wind it the whole time while holding the thread. Typically you would only do this for a couple seconds, and then you snip it, keep winding, and it's automatically going to just stop whenever this spool gets to the top, and it'll just shut off like that, and you'll keep sewing. So obviously I'm not winding a full bobbin. I'm just going to take that off for now, and actually there's a cutter right there. So that's a little bonus feature on this machine that a lot of people, and I actually didn't even know about for a while. You can remove that bobbin like so, and then you're going to insert it into your bobbin case. Inserting it into your bobbin case is very simple, very similar to like the semi-industrial Juki TLs. All you're going to do is make sure that bobbin thread falls down on the right side, insert it into the bobbin with the thread going on the right side, let it fall in that little groove, and then pull it over into that little groove there. Then you're going to do the bobbin test. You want to make sure that you can kind of pull it up and there's some tension on the bobbin case like that. You can adjust that tension by loosening this recessed flathead. Left is loose, right is tight. And on industrials, you want it kind of tight. So I kind of like it where I can pick up the bobbin like this. And I like it where I can just kind of feel the tension with my fingers. And I like a little bit of tension when pulling up on that bobbin thread. You can loosen it or tighten it a little bit. You could also just base it on what your tension looks like on your fabric when you're sewing, because every fabric is going to want a little different tension. Once you've inserted that thread, you snip it. So you have like a 2 to 3.5 inch tail. And then when inserting it on this machine, you can open this door so you can see a little better, but you want to make sure this little cutout is kind of facing up and to the left towards the back of the machine a little bit. And I don't like to use this trap door because I want to hear it click in. If you use that trap door, you don't actually hear it click into the machine. So I'm going to reach down here and, oh, you got to make sure your needle's up. Oh, actually, yep, just like that. Boom, you hear that click. So the bobbin is going to be facing pretty much straight up with this cutout up. So actually, this cutout should just be pretty much straight up when you put it in there, which it kind of looks weird because this door is not level. It's kind of like this when it gets inserted into the bobbin or into the basket. So So you hear that click, you know you're good to go. You've got your little thread tail sticking over here on the side. I also forgot, when you're actually winding the bobbin, before you go through this thread guide and go around that tension disc there and then back through that thread guide, you should go through this thread guide back to front like so, and then go through this thread guide and around that tension disc. So just watch the threading video, because I kind of forgot about that step. It's not that big of a deal. It still works perfectly fine without doing that, but that just adds a little bit more tension. So just know that you can do it that way. So let's go ahead and thread the machine. So threading the machine, there's a whole bunch of different thread guides up here, or little holes in this thread guide. When I'm using Tech 70, and that's what I'm using today, I just go through like 2 of those. If the heavier the thread, the more tension you're gonna want. So then you would go through more of these holes. So you could go through all 4 or 3 of them. So that's that I'm gonna be going through this thread guide, right to left again. And the beautiful thing about these machines is, since you're using such a heavy duty industrial thread, it threads through the machine really nice and easy. So now I'm gonna go right to left around this tension disc here. Then I'm gonna go around this little spring, take-up spring. You pull it up. Make sure you're going in that slot. So I like to actually hold this thread over here to give me some tension. Makes it easier. It's like flossing. Just nice to have 2 hands to make some tension to make it go through those gaps. So now from that little take-up, I'm gonna go into this thread guide, into this thread guide, and then I like to put my take-up lever all the way up in the air. So this is your take-up lever, and it's behind this safety guide. That's a feature on the S model only, and that take-up lever is moving up and down, so it's nice to have this. It's a little safety feature. And then I'm going to go back through this thread guide that I went through just a second ago, and then I go through this thread guide behind this little guide here too. I like to move it back and use that hand. It is sometimes nice to have tweezers on this step. Just like so. And then I'm going behind this thread guide here. And then I'm going in the needle thread guide, and then I'm going left to right through the needle. So needle, now that we're down to the needle, let's talk about the needle system on this machine. So the needle system on this machine is going to be about 18 to like 23 size needle, and it's going to be a 135 by 17 needle system. When you're changing the needle on this machine, it's a little different than your standard home sewing machines, because these needles don't have flat sides to them. So when you go to change the needle, you're just gonna loosen this screw like so. And you're gonna see that on these needles, there's not a flat side. It's perfectly round. And since this needle bar is perfectly round, you have to know how to put it into the machine and which way it should face. So you wanna understand what the needle looks like, and the needle has a small indentation on it, and that's called the scarf of the needle. That scarf needs to face to the right of the machine, but also perfectly flush with the sewer. So the indentation should face to the right, but not to the right like that, where it's facing like that. The scarf needs to be perfectly to the right, so it should be like perfectly in line with the sewer and to the right. So when you're inserting this, what I like to do is I like to grab another needle, like a home sewing smaller needle, and insert it into the eye of this needle, and use that to rotate this to get it nice and in line where the indentation of that scarf is facing to the right, and also making sure it's pushed up all the way. You'll see right in front of the thread guide where your thread goes, there's a little window, and you can actually see that needle get pushed all the way up, and you'll know when it's all the way to the top. So it's important to make sure it's pushed all the way to the top, and that that scarf of the needle is facing to the right, so that way your machine picks up the thread and everything works. Once you have that, then you can tighten that thread guide, that needle screw down to the right. You don't have to crank it down anything crazy, just tighten it to the right. Once you've done that, you're going to thread your needle from left to right with your thread. Give it a nice clean cut. Left to right with your thread, just like so. And then now is the time to go ahead and put on your knee lift lever and pick up your foot. Okay, so now that we've got the needle threaded, you're going to want to lift up with your knee lift lever, and that's why I said it's really important to have that. You're going to rotate your needle or rotate your hand wheel towards you. It should always come towards you, and you can pull that thread over like that. And on this machine, it's nice to pull up your bobbin thread. So you're going to rotate the hand wheel towards you and hold this thread, and that's what's going to pull up your bobbin thread. So when you're doing this, it's kind of hard to explain how it feels. A lot of people will have a trouble doing this sometimes, pulling up your bobbin thread. But let's just try to see exactly how I can explain this. So you have that clicked in, you hold this thread, you rotate your hand wheel towards you, and as the needle starts coming up, just kind of slightly, ever so slightly pull on this thread, and then as you're rotating it up, the bobbin thread will eventually just kind of get pulled up, and you just kind of keep tension on this needle thread as you're rotating the hand wheel, and then voila, this will pop up. Once you have both threads pulled back or pulled up, you can pull them back, and then what I like to do is give them a nice clean cut so they're about an inch and a half long, 2 inches, and just push them towards the back. And that'll help contribute to a clean start in sewing so you don't have a little bird nest on the bottom when you start sewing. I'm going to put my material underneath, and I'm using just a sample I had underneath the machine here at the local shop, and you can see it's really heavy leather with some like fluffy stuff and more heavy leather. So this is a pretty dense sample, but we're going to go ahead and sew through this. We have a leather needle on this machine, so it should sew right through this like nothing. And we'll just kind of show you how you start out with sewing. So once you have the threads pushed back, you made sure everything's threaded properly, you can literally just put your material underneath the machine and start sewing. And as you can see, we have the needle positioner on this machine, so the needle's always ending down, which is really nice because now I can lift up my foot, pivot the material, and keep sewing. So the needle positioner is a great option if you can come up with the extra money and get that. I would highly recommend it. As you can see, when this machine sews, we're going through some seriously thick layers here, and it feeds it like nothing. So the feeding mechanism on this machine is a needle feed walking foot system. So if you get a close up here, you'll see the needle is actually moving. The needle actually moves forward. So we're starting with the needle right here, and watch this. Now it's over here. So the needle's actually moving forward, your inner foot's moving, and your outer foot's moving. So on this machine, you have two different feet. You have an inner foot and an outer foot. So whenever you change the feet on this machine, you have to change both feet. So you have to keep that in mind when you're changing the foot. It's not as easy as your home sewing machines. You're changing the inner and the outer. We'll go over that here more in a couple seconds. I'm going to finish sewing here. When I come to an end, I'm going to rotate my hand wheel, and it's important to have that take-up lever all the way up. When it's all the way up, that's when you can lift up your foot and pull your material out. If it's down like this, it's kind of tough to pull that material out. It wants to be kind of all the way up, and that's how you know that's the best end position to actually pull your material out. Then you can cut your thread, and you're ready to start sewing again. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that take-up lever is all the way up when you pull your foot up. A couple other things I want to show you real quick while we're sewing is this is going to be your stitch length dial. So this will control how long your stitches are. We go all the way up to 9 millimeters, all the way down to 0, and you'll just rotate this hand wheel. It's easier to rotate it when you push your reverse lever down. So we'll kind of just sew real quick. We're at like 7.5. reverse lever, you just hold it down and it's gonna go back. And you can go full speed pretty much. Well, actually, yeah, you can go pretty much full speed with the reverse lever down. There's no limitation. So you'll see I'm just back-tacking just like that. And then lift up my foot. See how it's not wanting to pull? It's like really tight. Now I wait for that take-up lever to go up all the way, and now it just pulls real nice. You can pull it out, cut it, and you're done. So on this machine, your upper tension knob is going to be this knob here. This is where you're going to make your upper tension adjustments. And then also your pressure foot knob is going to be up here. So this is going to be your press foot pressure. You're going to loosen this collar to the left, and then you can move this, and that's going to control how much tension you have on your foot. You'll want to adjust that. Make sure you have it at less tension on the foot when you're sewing over thicker stuff and more tension when you're sewing over thinner stuff. So that is a nice little feature there. Another thing I would mention is this little side cover on the machine. You'll know in the oiling video how you can open this and oil some little swabs in here. There's a screw that goes into this hole. If you just unscrew it, this lid is magnetic. So you just unscrew that screw and just throw it in your little drawer, and you don't have to worry about unscrewing it every time. So that's a nice little tip. The next thing I want to mention is how you would mount seam gauges and drop down gauges on this machine. There's different mounting points all throughout this machine. You can mount the T gauge or the swing gauge. We have them on our website right here. Or you can mount the drop down seam gauge, which we have linked on our website as well. We'll throw up a picture of what that looks like. And it drops down onto the throat space of this area. And you can have a straight guide or a roller foot guide, or a roller guide, I guess it's not called a roller foot. And that makes it real nice when you're sewing different materials to just throw up your seam gauge and then drop it down depending on when you need it. It's also very customizable and very adjustable, so that's a really nice feature and option to purchase with this machine. Okay, so your inner and your outer foot. So to change the inner foot, you're going to grab a flathead and you're going to go to the back side of this flathead screw, and you're just going to crack it loose, just like so. And then the outer foot, you're going to do the same thing. Grab a big flathead, crack that flathead screw loose. It's pretty hard, so use a big flathead. And this screw you're going to have to remove all the way. Your outer foot will drop down, and then your inner foot will drop like that as well. And so now you'll have both feet. You can move that needle up so it's out of the way. And boom, now you have your outer foot and your inner foot off the machine. To put that back on, you're just going to reverse that process. You're going to put the inner foot on first, and so when you put your inner foot on, you're going to want to make sure it's pushed up all the way, and then you're going to make sure that it's centered with the needle. So when the needle goes through it, it's centered so it doesn't hit the needle. And then you're going to go ahead and tighten that down all the way. Make sure it's nice and tight because it could move. So remember, use a big flathead. So it's actually way too close to the needle, so I need to move it over. And so when you put this foot on, it might be kind of weird because your foot might not even be touching the feed dogs, and that's because that foot goes up and down as your foot moves up and down. So that's why you just want to make sure it's pushed up all the way. And then the outer foot, you're going to lift up all this with your foot, or you could just leave this back lever up, and then you push this all the way up, and you feed this screw right through the side. Hand tighten it first, and then go back with your flathead and tighten it down all the way. So remember, inner and outer foot, whenever you're shopping for the feet on this machine, there's a lot of aftermarket feet out there. Make sure it's an inner and an outer foot, not just a single foot. So now that we've gone over changing out your inner and your outer foot, we've gone over kind of briefly threading it, winding a bobbin briefly. We've gone over to the stitch length, the reverse lever, the hand wheel. Let's talk about some little solutions or issues that you might run upon when you are using this machine, and simple fixes for it. So number one, the biggest thing is going to be people aren't using their knee lift lever enough, and they're complaining about that hand wheel, that lifting up the foot manually, how hard it is. Make sure you're using your knee lift lever. Also make sure these bolts are tight, because that is one question I get quite often. Why is my knee lift lever not working? Well, your bolts are just not tightened down all the way. The next thing that I've seen happen quite often is people don't use their machine enough, or they're not sewing fast enough on it, and the machine's not feeding enough oil to the hook of the machine, which is over here. So when you're sewing on this machine, it's self-oiling that hook, but if you're not sewing really fast, it's probably not pushing too much oil over here. So it's nice every now and then to just run this machine nice and fast and try to get a whole bunch of oil over to that basket, so that way it is well oiled. So let me show you a little bit more in depth what I'm talking about here. So this is your basket, this part right here. When you rotate your hand wheel, your basket will stay in place, but your hook will go around the basket. This is your hook, this little point right here. That hook is going around and catching that loop, and it goes around really, really fast when you're sewing. So you want to make sure there's oil right on the edge of, well, right in between. So right here on the basket and right here on the basket, so that way when this hook goes around that metal and it's rubbing on the basket, it's well lubricated. If it's not well lubricated, then it can knock your positioner finger or your basket out of place. So you can see this is the positioner finger here, and that holds the basket in place, and you can kind of see there's a little tiny groove right there in the basket, and then there's a little notch on that positioner finger, and that's what holds it in place. And you'll see when you rotate this hand wheel, the basket kind of bounces off of the positioner finger back and forth. So if that hook, or I mean, if that basket is not well oiled and that hook is going around a really dry basket, it actually gains so much friction that it'll pull that basket out of place. The positioner finger will let go of the basket, you'll break a needle, and then you won't be able to sew. And then you'll call me and you'll be like, how do I fix this? Well, you're gonna have to call a certified service tech to walk you through the process of fixing that, or give me a call if you purchased from us. That's one of the perks when you're buying from Juki Junkies, is we will walk you through any service related questions that you can do at home and repair, and that is one of the things that we could definitely walk you through at home. So that is something that I definitely wanted to go over, because that's something that I've seen people do. They just don't oil that area, or they're not running their machine fast enough, and the simple solution to that is adjusting that little screw, which I showed you there, and you can just make more oil be fed to that hook area. So I'll show you that screw one more time. The screw is going to be right here, and there's a little lock nut on it. So what you'll do is you'll loosen this nut, and then you'll turn that flathead in this screw right here, turn it right to restrict it, and left to gain more oil, and then you'll tighten down that lock nut again. Again, if you have questions on that, I think there's a video out there on how to adjust that. So you could probably find that video or call me and I'll help you walk you through that process. So as you can see, this is our 1541S, and over here, as you get to that hand wheel, you'll also notice this is the synchronizer. This is what speaks to the motor on the bottom and tells it what position that needle is in. So remember, I have a full video going over that needle positioner, but I'll just briefly show you how easy it is to control this needle positioner. So we have it in the down position, and how I know that is this little red line is on the lower part of this area. If I press it, it'll go up. So now my needle is always going to end up when I'm sewing and I stop sewing. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So see how my needle's always ending up? So now it's always ending up, and I can always pull my thread out. So that's how the needle positioner works. You can position it whether or not you want it to be in the up or the down position, just on a click of a button. So now we have it in the up position. And now I'll just give you a brief, quick little trick / tip on how to change the speed real easy on this machine. You're gonna hold down this button where the M is until it stops moving. Hold it down until it goes to P1, press enter, and then you can just cycle through the speeds by tapping on M. And then once you select the speed you like, hold down the enter button, wait for it to click, and then when that thing's rotating, you're ready to go. So there is all the tips and tricks on the 1541S for a beginner or somebody that hasn't gotten this machine yet at home and they kind of want to just learn more about it. here's pretty much everything you need to know on this machine. And if you have any other questions or concerns, give us a call. We're Juki Junkies, and we love to talk to you about the right machine for you. One other thing I forgot to mention is this little side drawer on the table is fantastic for storing some little components. The machine does come with an LED light that plugs into a wall outlet, or if you have the standard motor, it'll plug into the motor itself where the motor actually has a plug. The servo motor, the needle positioner motor, does not have a plug for that LED light. It also comes with an extra bobbin, a little pack of needles, and a cover. So that is real nice, that little hand cover there. So just like that, we've gone over all the tips and tricks on getting started with the Juki 1541S. If you guys have any questions or concerns on this machine, or you're just still considering whether or not you want this machine, don't hesitate to give us a call at all the information we're going to throw up on the screen. Send us an email if you have questions. This machine is a phenomenal upholstery, bag making, and heavier duty sewing machine. So if you're ready to get this machine, or if you already have one, I hope you guys enjoy it. You'll love this machine. It's fantastic. Make sure you give us a like on this video, comment down below if you have any questions. I'll be happy to help you guys out, and hit that subscribe button down below. When you subscribe to our channel, you follow our channel, it'll pop up on your YouTube home feed. You'll get more information on Juki sewing machines, and also it lets us know how many people are following us, so it inspires us to make new videos every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just like that, I hope you guys had a great day. Don't forget to check out JukiJunkies.com, shop all of our accessories, purchase machines from us. We love to provide great customer support and service for you, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your Sunday. We'll see you next Sunday. Bye.